It was just this Christmas that went by, and things were getting busy. I had to start buying presents for the family. I had finished shopping, but I still needed to grab a present for my little cousin. She is not very hard to shop for since she is 4. She likes things like Peppa Pig and My Little Pony. She really liked, and I say liked for a reason, Max and Ruby. So, when I decided to go looking for a present, I figured something like a Max and Ruby DVD would have been perfect, since she liked to watch it on a daily basis. However, Christmas meant that most of the online DVDs were sold out on most places. I went to look on eBay as well, but figured I could not trust what condition the DVDs would have been in. So I was stuck in a rut for a while, until that package arrived. I was at home still scrolling for the stupid DVD, until I heard the sound of something being pushed into my letterbox. I caught a hold of it before my dog did, and looked at the package. It seemed to be wrapped fairly bad, with what looked like grease and marks and stains on it. Naturally, like someone would, I decided to open the package. Inside was something that I could not explain. It was a Max and Ruby DVD, but I had not seen one like this before online. It was like some little kid had drawn on the front cover with a marker. The title was just Max and Ruby, and what looked like a poorly drawn pictures of Max and Ruby on the front. There were no names or anything, but on the back it had a list of 4 episodes, all with blunt titles. Episode 0001. Episode 0002. Episode 0003. And episode 0004. I gave the DVD a watch over, and to my surprise, the episodes were all in perfect quality, and seemed to have no flaws. It was as if it was the real DVD, just with a homemade cover. The only thing I thought of was odd was the episode selection screen. The episodes had names, but they were all called Max and Ruby 1, with the numbers being changed as it went down the list. The actual selection screen was just a plain white screen with black text with the episode list and nothing else. After giving it much thought, I decided to change the cover to something a little nicer by printing out a DVD cover I had found on Google and tracked down the names of the episodes so they were labeled right. I left the episode list screen alone. Christmas went by and things were fine. I gave my little cousin her DVD and she was happy with it all through Christmas. But that was only because she had not watched it yet. On Boxing Day, the family had gone out for a meal. It left me to babysit my cousin. I was not too bothered about being left alone at home. I figured now was a good time to put on the DVD for her. I had to put the DVD in and let it play. While I was in the kitchen eating my dinner, from what I could hear, she had watched episodes 1 to 3 so far. I was just about to finish off my noodles when I heard my cousin screaming from the other room. Dropping everything, I had to run into the living room. I saw my cousin curled up on the floor screaming. I looked up on the TV and I felt my heart in my throat. What I caught a glimpse of was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen. It was what appeared to be a frame of Max and Ruby standing next to each other in complete darkness. But what made it so horrible was that their lack of faces. They had lost their noses and mouths, and their eyes were replaced with big hollow holes. The collars were a disgusting blood red, and there was a faint static in the background. The sound was replaced with what sounded like the Max and Ruby theme, playing backwards. With the feint of aesthetic in the mix of it all, it had to be the most disturbing thing I have ever seen. And it must have been on screen for at least 20 seconds before the screen went to black to the DVD turned off. Which alone was weird because DVDs do not usually turn off by themselves. I was able to calm my cousin down, tell her it was not real, and she had just had a nightmare as she had fallen asleep in the front of the DVD. However, I knew in my mind it was completely real. My parents had rung me up and told me that they'll be going out all night, so this was going to be the best opportunity to look at this DVD more closely. I did not mention it to them, and as soon as I hung up, I grabbed the DVD and I stuck it on my laptop. As soon as I loaded it, I noticed that episode 004 had now been replaced with Rip, Mommy, and Daddy, which sent a deep chill down my back. Since my cousin was now asleep, I kept the sound on low and proceeded with the episode. Normally, an episode of Max and Ruby would have 3 short stories, but this episode only had 1. It started off quite lighthearted. Max and Ruby were playing tag in the garden, and their parents were on the porch watching them play. However, something was off. The sound was playing in reverse, and the parents' faces were that of sadness. It panned to the mother and father in the voice of deep sorrow. The father spoke. "It's such a shame," he sighed. It then cut short to the sound of static and a large scream, followed by the sound of 2 people choking. The sounds were so realistic, it made me almost physically sick. The scene then switched to Max and Ruby standing in front of what looked like a gravestone labeled, "Rest in peace, Mommy and Daddy." The 2 of them had no faces. At this point, there was also no sound, apart from faint static. This scene remained on screen for about a minute and a half before it cut away into black. It then changed scene again, now showing Max and Ruby sitting in Ruby's room. Both of them were sobbing. The sobs were so realistic and heart-wrenching that it sounded like it was taken from the real person moaning. What happened next was the most disturbing yet saddest thing I've ever witnessed. The scene had changed to Max sitting in his room. He was standing on a chair with a noose hanging from the ceiling. He had brought it around his neck. The scene faded to black and the static got louder, almost instantly, and then cut to Ruby walking in on her brother. She let out a gut-twisted scream. The camera was panned on her face as the sound of the chair being kicked and the same choking from before it began to play. The picture of Ruby's face stayed on screen for a good 5 minutes. This time, her eyes had returned as the same gaping holes. And as before, there were no other facial features. The static slowly grew louder and drowned out the sound of her cries. The scene cut to black into a loud static. When the screen returned, Ruby was sitting, now on her own, in the garden by 2 gravestones. One was labeled, "Rest in peace, Mommy and Daddy," and the other, "Rest in peace, Brother." At this point, I had already been sick and was sitting all shaken. The episode seemed to have come to an end at last, as the Max and Ruby theme song played slowly in reverse. I was about to eject the DVD when the same image came up like it did on the TV. This time, however, there was a text above the 2 rabbits that said, "Death is our only release." It stayed on this for a few seconds before the DVD finally popped out on my laptop. I sat there trying to figure out what had happened. In my shock and fear, I made the stupid decision to break the DVD up as much as I could before leaving the house. I shoved the pieces down the drain. Thankfully, I kept a few screenshots and saved them to my laptop. The next couple of days went past without anything unusual happening. I had a few nightmares about the DVD, but luckily that was all. My cousin had gone back home along with the rest of the family. It was a late night. My parents had gone out for dinner, leaving me to watch TV. I heard what sounded like someone posting something through the door. At this point, the DVD had left my mind since I had told nobody about it. However, it all came flooding back when I looked down at the letter in front of me. It was just messily folded up, and it read, "Death is our only release."